Gumption by Langston Hughes. You young folks don't remember the Depression, but I do. No jobs for nobody. That winter there wasn't a soul working in our house but my wife, and she was evil as could be. She was doing a few washings now and then for the white folks, before hand laundry went out of style, so we kinder made out. But she didn't like to see me sitting around even if I couldn't find a job. There wasn't no work to be got in our town, nor any other place for that matter. We had a couple of roomers, a man and his girlfriend, but they were out of a job also, and like me and my wife, they hadn't been in town long enough to get any consideration, since the relief folks were hard on strangers. All of us just managing to get by on beans and mush all winter. One cold February morning, we was sitting around the stove in the kitchen trying to keep warm, the roomers and me. My wife was ironing, when who should pass by outside in the alley but Old Man Oyster and his son. "There goes Oyster and that boy of his," I said. "Ragged as a jaybird, both of 'em." "They ain't even on relief work, is they?" Jack, the roomer, asked. "They did have a few hours work a month," I answered. "They messed up, though." "Messed up, you call it, eh?" my wife put in her nervous way. "Well, they got gumption anyhow. They told them white folks up yonder in the office just what they thought of 'em. That's what they said. And look at 'em now," I said, "going through the alley looking for something to eat." "Well, they got gumption," my wife said, "and that's something." "You can't eat gumption," Jack remarked, which made my wife mad. "You can't eat sitting around on your rumpus neither," she broke out, slamming her iron down on the white man's shirt and looking real hard at the roomer, a look that said, "You ought not talk, 'cause you ain't paid your rent for a month." I sure was glad I hadn't said nothing, boy. "What's it all about?" Jack's girl asked. "What's Old Man Oyster done to get in bad with the relief folks, Miss Clara?" She had heard about it before, from me, but she just wanted to get my wife to run in her mouth and keep her mind off the fact that they ain't paid their rent in that month. "You ain't heard," my wife said, choosing a new hot iron. "It's a story worth telling to my mind, 'cause they got gumption, them oysters." She looked hard at Jack and me. "Now, Old Man Oyster, the story goes way back, child. He ain't never amounted to much, just poor and honest. But he always did want to make something out of that boy of his, Charlie. Little and runty as he was, he worked hard to do it, too. He portered, bellhopped, did road work, did anything he could to get do. Kept that boy in school after his wife died. Washed his ears, kept him clean, tried to make a gentleman out of him, and that boy did pretty well, grew up and took a commercial bookkeeping typewriter course in school, and come out grade A. Grade A, I'm telling you, graduated and got a job with the white folks. Yes, sir, first time I ever heard of a colored boy typewriting or keeping books or anything like that in this white man's town. But Mr. Bartleson, that owned the coal yard and fuel office where young Oyster worked, he was from Maine, and he didn't have no prejudice to speak of, so he gave this colored boy a chance in this place. And was them white truck drivers jealous seeing a Negro working in the office, and they out driving their trucks? But Old Man Oyster's boy was prepared. I am telling you, prepared. He had a good education and could do the work, black as he was, and he was lucky to find somebody to give him a break, because you know, and I know, you don't see no colored men working in white folks' offices nowhere, hardly. Well, sir, Old Man Oyster was proud as he could be of his boy. We was all proud. The church was proud. The white business school that graduated him was proud. Everything went fine for 2 or 3 years. Oyster and Charlie even started to buy a little house, 'cause the old man was working on the road digging for 40 cents an hour. Then the Depression came. They stopped building roads, and folks stopped buying fuel to keep warm. Poor Old Man Bartleson that owned the coal yard finally had to close up, bankrupted, and broke, which left young Oyster without a job, like the rest of us. Old Man Oyster was jobless, too, 'cause the less roads they built and sewers they laid, the less work they gave the colored folks, and gave it to white instead. You know how it is. First to be fired, last to be hired. Clara was just ironing and telling. Then along came this government relief, And WPA that everybody thought times was surely going to get better. Well, they ain't got no better, leastwise not for colored. Everybody in this town's on relief now, but me and you all. What ain't been here long enough to be in it. I've still got a few washings to do and a little house cleaning now and then, thank God. But look at Sylvester pointing at me. They have done cut every porter off the bus station but one, and Sil is jobless as a greyhound. Anyhow, to go ahead with Oyster. It was a crying shame to see this poor old man and this fine young colored boy out of work, and they both ambitious and steady and good race men. Well, when relief opened up and they started giving out so many hours of work a month, they put old man Oyster back on the road. Now his boy Charlie ain't never done no kind of work like road work, being an office man, but he thought he'd have to do too. Charlie wasn't objecting, mind you, when the government opened up an office for what they calls white-collar workers. All the white folks what's been doing office work in good times, insurance people, store clerks and such, they went there to get kind of work they was used to doing. Oyster's son went too, but you know they discriminated against him. Yes, sir, the government discriminated him because he were black. They said, you're not an office worker, in spite of all the proofs Charlie had that he were in Mr. Bartleston's office for 3 years. The letter Bartleson gave him and all. But they sent old man Oyster's boy right out yonder to work on the road with his father. Well, that made old man mad. He said, what am I working all these years for, educating you, come out here and dig a road with me, and you with an education. The old man stopped his work then, there that morning, laid off, and went right up to the government office to see white men about it. And that's where the trouble commenced. Clara was just a-talking and ironing. The government white man said, you ought to be glad for the boy you got to kind of work these days and times. You can't be picking and choosing now. But old man Oyster stood there and argued with the man for his son's rights. That's why I say he's got gumption. He said, I ain't asking to be picking and choosing, and I ain't asked for nothing for myself. I'm speaking about the boy of mine. Charlie's got an education. True, he's colored, but he's worked for 3 years in an office for one of the finest white men that ever lived and breathed, Mr. Bartleson. Charlie's got experience. My boy's a typewriter and a bookkeeper. What for you send him out to work in the road with me? Ain't this a place that's given all the white folks jobs doing what they used to do and know how to do? My boy ain't know nothing about no picks and shovels. Why don't you treat Charlie Oyster like you do the rest of the people and give him some of his kind of work? We have no office jobs here for Negroes, said the man, flat out like that. That's why I sent your son where they gave out road work. I classify all Negroes as laborers on our relief rolls. Well, that made old man Oyster mad as hell. He said, drat it, I'm a citizen. It was what WPA is for, to bring more discrimination than what is. I want to know why my boy can't be a typewriter like the rest of them. What's got training, even if it's on relief. He could work in a white man's office. Ain't good enough to work from you? And you, the government? Well, this made the white man mad, and he yelled, you must be one of them communists, ain't you? And he pressed some kind of old buzzer and sent out for a cop. Now, old man Oyster ain't never had no trouble any kind in this town before, but when them cops started to put their hands on him and throw him out of that office, he raised sand. He was right, too, but them cops didn't see it that way, and one of them even brought his stock down on that old man's head and knocked him out. When Oyster came to, he was in jail. Then old man Oyster's son showed he was a man. Charlie heard about the trouble when he came home from off the road that evening, and he went to the jail to see his papa boiling mad. When he heard how it was, that white man calling the cops in to beat up his father, he said, Pa, I'll be in jail here with you tomorrow. And sure enough, he was. He went up to that white-collar relief office the next morning and beat that white man so bad, he ain't got over it yet. The idea, young Oyster said, of you having my father knocked down and dragged out because he came here to talk to you like a citizen about our rights. Who are you anyway, any more'n me? Try to throw me out of here, and I'll beat you to a pulp first. Well, that man reached for the buzzer again to call more cops. When he reached, young man Oyster had him. And he would have done me good to see the way the black boy gave that white man a fit, 'cause he turned him every way but loose. When the cops came, they put Charlie in jail all right, but that white man was beat by then. The idea of relief coming here, adding prejudice to what we already got, in times as hard as they is. Clara planked down her iron on the stove. Anyhow, they didn't keep the oysters in jail very long, neither father nor son. Old Judge Murray gave a month apiece, suspended sentence, and let 'em out. But when they got out of jail, don't you know them relief people wouldn't give Oyster and his boy no more work a tail? No, sir, they told them there wasn't feeding no black reds. No old man, now old man Oyster nor Charlie, neither ain't never heard o' communists. But that's what they called 'em, just 'cause they went up there and fought for what they ought to have. They didn't win. They're out there in the alleys now, hauling trash. But they got gumption. You can't live on gumption, I said, trying to be practical. No, but you can choke on shame, my wife yelled, looking hard at Jack and me. I ain't never seen you all fighting for nothing yet. Lord knows you both bad enough off to go out and raise hell somewhere and get something. She put the iron down with a bang. If I had a young boy, I'd want him to be like Oyster's son, and not take after none of you, sitting around behind the stove talking about you can't live on gumption. You can't live on it, 'cause you ain't got none, that's why. Get up from behind that stove. Get out of here, both of you, and bring me something back I can use. Bread, money, a job, I don't care which. Get up and go on, scat! She waved her iron in the air and looked at me, and the look she meant to bring it down on my head. And looked like she meant to bring it down on my head instead of the shirt. So Jack and me had to leave that nice warm house and go out in the cold and scuffle. There was no peace at home that morning. I mean, I had to try and work up a little gumption.